All right, so we're going to get into some really, really fascinating stuff today. The world of AI never really seems to slow down, does it?
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Every day there's a new headline, a new development.
And what's interesting is you sent me some stuff about Amazon.
I remember this.
Of all companies, right? Amazon
Yeah,
kind of jumping into this AI race with something called Nova Act.
right. And this is a really interesting one, I think, because it really shows how things might be changing and how quickly.
Yeah.
Because we're at a point where everybody's talking about these large language models and
Yeah.
generative AI, but this is different.
Yeah, this feels different. And this is for our listeners out there, this is a deep dive. We're going to try and unpack this as much as we can. And yeah, it does seem like Amazon is now a real player in this space that's already got some pretty big names, You've got your OpenAI, you've got Google.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they're going to approach this because they're coming in with their own strengths and their own kind of perspective on where this technology can go. And I think this is going to be a really interesting battle to watch.
Definitely. So you sent me some stuff, a good mix, like some news articles, even a YouTube transcript of some sort of announcement or something.
That's right.
So what's the mission here? What are we going to try and pull out from all this information?
Well, I think it's really about trying to cut through the noise.
Hmm.
We hear a lot of hype around AI. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is very, very cool technology, but we have to kind of separate what's real, what's actually possible, and what are just, claims.
Exactly. And also, I think for me at least, is, okay, what does this actually mean? Like, how does this affect people? How does this affect businesses? Is this something that we all need to be paying very close attention to right now? Or is this something that maybe is still in its early phases?
Well, and this is the other thing that's fascinating here. It seems like it might be ready for prime time,
Yeah.
sooner than we think. So let's dive into it. So first things first, Amazon has announced a whole suite of AI models that they're calling Nova,
Okay. Nova.
okay? And these are, think of it like a family of models, they're all kind of related. But there's one in particular that's getting a lot of attention, and that's Nova Act.
Okay.
Now, what makes this different, or what, at least from the sources you provided, is interesting, is that it's an AI agent that is specifically designed to act inside of a web browser. So in other words, it's not just about, processing language or creating images or music. This is about doing things, taking action inside of that web environment.
So it's almost like having a little digital helper running around inside your browser that's doing stuff for you, which, I mean, even just conceptually, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it's putting Amazon in direct competition with some of the big players out there that are already doing similar things. You've got, as we mentioned, OpenAI with their operator and deep research, and then you've got Google. They've got a tool that coincidentally also happens to be called deep research.
I know. It's very confusing.
Right. It's like, what? Come on, guys. Get creative. But yeah, they're both doing similar things. And then you've got Anthropic, which has their computer use tool. And these are all, AI agents that are designed to do things, to take action. So Amazon is jumping into a pretty crowded but very, very interesting space right now.
Okay, so, let's say I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, that sounds cool, but what can it actually do? Like, what specifically can Nova Act do for me?
So the sources provide a pretty detailed list, and it's quite impressive. I mean, naturally, it can do web searches. I mean, that's kind of a given at this point.
Oh.
But where things get really interesting is its ability to actually make purchases online. And not just like click buy now. It can follow specific instructions. Like I was reading in one of the articles, it said, like, for example, you could tell it, don't accept the insurance upsell when you're buying something.
Wow.
Right. So it has that level of granularity. It can understand those types of instructions.
Amazing. So I guess it's not just about like mindlessly click of things. It actually seems to understand the context of what it's doing.
Well, that's the suggestion, and that's the hope. And if that's true, that raises a lot of questions about, the level of control we have, the transparency, can we audit what it's doing, all those things. But yeah, the sources indicate it has that kind of capability.
Interesting.
It can also answer questions based on what's on your screen.
Okay.
So you can be looking at something and say, hey, Nova Act, what is this? And it can pull information from the web, from its knowledge base, and provide you an answer. It can do scheduling of tasks. So you can say, hey, Nova Act, remind me to do this at this time. But really where this shines, I think, based on what I've read, is its ability to manage really complex multi-step tasks.
Okay. Give me some examples.
Oh, the sources give some great examples.
Yeah.
One example is, imagine searching for apartments, not just based on location, but also on like biking distance to a specific train station.
Okay.
Or it could plan like a whole vacation itinerary for you with flights, hotels, activities, all based on your preferences.
That's impressive.
Right. Filling out really complex forms online, making restaurant reservations, based on certain criteria, ordering groceries, even compiling really complex research reports,
Wow.
analyzing, questions, topics. These are all examples that are provided. So this is not just about simple things. This is about managing those complex multi-step processes that we often find ourselves doing online.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know about you, but half the time I'm filling out those complex forms online, I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Totally. And it's not just personal tasks. You can also manage digital workflows. So for businesses, for example,
Hmm.
managing projects, assigning tasks, tracking progress. So it really has the potential to be this sort of like, I don't know what you call it.
An all-in-one digital assistant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like an AI co-pilot.
Exactly.
That can just handle a lot of that stuff that we currently spend so much time doing. And the important thing to remember here is that this is still in a research preview phase for developers.
Okay.
So this is not the final version. This is them getting it out there, getting feedback, iterating on it before they release it to the wider public.
Mhm.
So what we're seeing now is just a glimpse of what might be possible.
Yeah, and I imagine it's only going to get more sophisticated and powerful over time.
That's right. And the interesting thing is that Nova Act, it's not a standalone thing. It's part of a bigger family, as we mentioned, of these Nova AI models.
Right.
5 of these were actually announced back in like December 2024, so just last year.
Yeah.
And those include something that they call understanding models.
Okay.
So these are the ones that, handle language, comprehension, but they also have image and video generators.
Oh, wow.
So they're building out this whole suite of AI capabilities. So while Nova Act is focused on that web-based action, there are other parts of this Nova family that are doing other things.
I see. So it seems like Amazon is kind of going all in on AI across a whole spectrum of different functionalities.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And we're seeing that reflected in their investments. The reports say that they're spending upwards of like $100 billion this year on capital expenditures. And a lot of that is going towards AI.
It's a huge number, and it shows you where their priorities are. And the interesting thing is that they're not just investing in the software, they're also investing in the hardware.
Right?
So they have their own AI chips called Trainium chips,
Okay.
which are specifically designed for these AI workloads. And they're also overhauling Alexa.
Oh, really? So our little home assistant friend is getting an AI upgrade.
Yeah, so the new version, it's called Alexa Plus,
Okay. Alexa Plus.
and it uses Novak
Wow.
for certain tasks, like online tasks.
Mm.
So they're already integrating it into their existing products. And they even have an internal team that's dedicated to AGI, artificial general intelligence.
So the long-term goal basically is to create an AI that's as capable as a human being. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, so they're really thinking long-term here. It's not just about incremental improvements. It's about, what is the future of AI?
Yeah. So with all of this investment, with all of these different models that they're developing, how do they stack up against the competition? What are some of the key differences?
Well, the sources highlight a few things. First of all, the focus on action, on doing things,
Mm.
as opposed to just generating content.
Yeah, so they're really emphasizing that Nova Act is about actually getting stuff done.
Exactly. And another big thing is cost effectiveness. They claim that their Nova suite is at least 75% less expensive than comparable models from their rivals.
Wow. Okay, if that's true, that's huge because cost is a major barrier for a lot of businesses and developers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if they can deliver on that promise, that could be a major differentiator.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the integration with AWS, which is a massive advantage.
Right, because they already have this enormous cloud infrastructure that businesses all over the world are using.
Exactly. So it's very easy for them to just plug these AI models into that existing ecosystem. Now, we should acknowledge the sources do mention some of the strengths of their competitors.
Yeah.
OpenAI is known for their conversational AI with GPT-40.
Right.
Google's Gemini 1.5 Pro is really good at real-time search integration. And Anthropic has this focus on ethical AI with Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So there are other players out there that have their own strengths. But Amazon is carving out its own niche with this focus on action, on doing things, and on cost effectiveness.
Yeah, it's almost like they're coming at it from a different angle. They're not just trying to create the most impressive language model or the most amazing image generator. They're really focused on practicality.
Right, and I think that makes a lot of sense given their history, right?
Yeah.
They're all about getting things done, efficiency, making things easier for customers.
Making things easier for a customer. That's a great point. I mean, that's been their whole philosophy from the beginning.
Absolutely. And one interesting thing they mentioned in one of the sources is they did some internal benchmarking.
Oh, okay. And how did they do?
They claimed that Nova Act scored 94% on something called Screen Spot web text.
Okay.
And that apparently outperformed OpenAI's CUA and Anthropic's Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Now, obviously, take that with a grain of salt because it's their own internal testing, but it suggests that they're at least competitive in
Right.
terms of performance. So it's not just about the features and the vision. They seem to be backing it up with some actual results.
Okay, that's good to know. So they're putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak. Now, they're also, I understand, really trying to get developers on board with all of
Oh,
this.
yeah, big time.
So what are they doing to make that happen?
So they've launched a website,
Okay.
nova.amazon.com.
Nova.amazon.com.
And that's a central hub for developers to find information about Nova. But more importantly, they've released the Nova Act SDK,
SDK.
Software Development Kit. So this gives developers all the tools, libraries, and documentation they need to start building their own applications with Nova Act.
So they're making it as easy as possible for developers to get started and start experimenting with this.
Exactly. They want people to build on top of it, to create new and interesting things that they haven't even thought of.
So what's the long-term vision? What's the ultimate goal with all of this?
Well, the sources say that Amazon AGI, their artificial general intelligence team, their dream is to have these agents handle really wide-ranging, complex, multi-step tasks. So think about things like, organizing events, handling IT tasks, things that are really complicated and time-consuming.
So basically like a super-powered personal assistant that can do just about anything you need online.
Exactly. And they believe that this could significantly boost business productivity.
Mm.
So you can imagine a world where a lot of those, mundane, repetitive tasks that we currently do are handled by AI agents.
Yeah, which would free up human beings to focus on more creative and strategic work.
Exactly.
So if we were to kind of step back and look at the big picture here, what are some of the potential implications of this? I mean, how could this change the way we work, the way we live, the way we interact with the internet?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but the potential is enormous. It could really transform the way we use the internet. Imagine a world where you don't have to navigate websites, you don't have to fill out forms, you just tell your AI agent what you want, and it takes care of it.
Wow. Okay, that would be amazing.
Right. And for businesses, it could automate so many processes, it could improve customer service, it could really streamline operations in ways that we can't even imagine right now.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Amazon's Nova Act, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key takeaway is that Amazon is now a serious player in the AI agent space. They're coming at it with their own unique perspective, with their own strengths, and they're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with this technology.
And what are some of those key strengths that set them apart?
It's that focus on action, on actually doing things, not just generating content. It's the cost effectiveness, making this technology accessible to more people. And it's the integration with AWS, which gives them a massive advantage in terms of scale and reliability.
So for all of you listening out there, as you go about your day-to-day, as you're browsing the web, as you're interacting with technology, I want you to keep this in mind. How might AI agents like Nova Act change the way you do things? How might they affect your work, your life, your interactions with the world? Because this technology is evolving so rapidly, and it has the potential to really transform the way we live in the very near future.
And the thing to keep in mind is that it might happen sooner than we think. These are not far-off science fiction concepts. This is technology that's being developed right now, and it could be in our hands very, very soon. So it's important to start thinking about these implications now.
Absolutely. And just imagine the possibilities, both good and bad, that might arise as these AI agents become more sophisticated, more capable, and more integrated into our lives. And that's something for all of us to ponder as we move forward into this exciting and potentially transformative era of artificial intelligence.